ISACA Abuja Chapter warmly welcomes you to her 13th Annual Conference, ANCON 2021, taking place from the 4th to the 7th of October. Our theme this year is Building Infrastructural Resilience, the post-COVID-19 era. Over the next 4 days, you will connect with industry thought leaders, improve your knowledge, and grow your network. Join us online daily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For more information, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and our website www.isacaabuja.org. ISACA, advancing IT, audit, governance, risk, privacy, and cybersecurity. Our next speaker is Maureen Ideozu. Ms. Maureen Ideozu is a member of the faculty at GOTNI Leadership Centre. Ms. Maureen Ideozu, FICM, is a chartered management consultant and development professional with over 2 decades of experience working with international and national organizations. She is the principal partner at MCI Partners Ltd. Her areas of expertise include communications, team building, service delivery, public sector administration reforms, leadership, and change management. Under a private-public sector partnership arrangement, she was assigned as an Elumelu Fellow from 2014 to 2017 to provide technical support to Nigerian Export Promotion Council (NEPC) on institutional reforms, strategic partnerships, and business operations to enhance the effectiveness of NEPC. She is an accredited Belbin Team Roles Facilitator and the Belbin Regional Representative for Nigeria. Maureen has a Bachelor of Arts degree in History and a Master of Business Administration's degree. She has also trained extensively in her various roles throughout her career. The next voice you will hear will be our speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly welcome Maureen Ideozu to ANCON 2021.
Okay, all right. So basically, I'm going to be talking today about building high performance teams, but using Belbin team roles. Belbin, so you can go to the next slide. This is my profile, which is already being read. And so I have just 5 parts to this. The first thing is the introduction, and then we talk about teams, why teams, then the individuals in a team, what makes an effective team. And while we're talking about why teams and individuals in the team, we'll get to touch on the Belbin theory and how that is a very useful tool for ensuring high performance in teams. And then we have a conclusion, which is just the major highlights. So basically, all the organizations, as you would all know, are made up of individuals. And it is those individuals within teams who are able to work together to deliver on organizational goals and objectives. When we talk about results and performance of a team, it all depends on how people contribute, how they interrelate, and then it is only through that they're able to work together to, feature the overall performance of the team. So whether a team will do badly or do well depends on the makeup of that team. What Belbin has been able to do over the years is to be able to prove that with the formation of teams using the Belbin team role profile, you're able to have a lot of degree of predictability on the outcomes of how these teams work together. You'll find that sometimes people don't actually like to work in teams. You have different experiences that people have had in working as being members of teams. In some teams, people go and they can't act, they can't play up their roles. In some teams, they excel, but it all depends on how that makeup of the team is. So you can find that the dynamics of the team, just by the nature of one individual, the way the person acts or the way the person behaves, can actually make that team perform well or do badly. I'm sure if you think about it in your own situations, you would have seen that there are times when you perform better in certain situations and with certain individuals than you would with others. And what underlies this is basically behavior. And as we begin to talk more about this, you'll see how Belbin explains this and why it is a useful tool for enhancing the team performance and also for ensuring that teams work well together. So let's just say for that to determine team effectiveness, you really have to look at how team members interrelate, how they contribute, and how they're able to work to achieve common goals for the team. The next slide, please, Unsaki. So why teams? The co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, says that no matter how brilliant your mind or your strategy, if you're playing a solo game, you'd always lose out to a team. So if you situate yourself in a team, you're actually at an advantage, because what happens is that you have a broad range of talents and skill sets. People come in with diverse perspectives. There's innovative thinking, especially when you allow the space for that to happen. Also, people also have their morals improved. And then the service levels, what you're able to give out as a result of working in a team environment actually is better, is improved. And then you're much more productive when you don't try to do it all on your own. So I had mentioned Meredith Belbin. Meredith Belbin is a psychologist, and he and his colleagues back in the 70s, over a period of 9 years, observed some business executives from around the globe at Henley Business School, which is UK's first business school and one of the first in the entire Europe. So they observed these people over a period of 9 years, watching how they behaved to see whether it was a matter of personality or a matter of intellect, or all the forms to know whether to determine how effective the team would be. So I said that the theory actually helps to show predictability. So what they did is that they started by checking, putting all the highly intellectual people together using critical factors and all of that. But they found that wasn't it. That in fact, as a matter of fact, that team that had in their experiment that had the most intellectual people was the least performing team. Then they now said, okay, they do it around personality types. And so they did that and observed, and it still didn't work. And eventually, they also tried executive games like Timopoly and all of that. And again, they still did not arrive at what would make the teams effective until they did an observational model. And in that observational model, every 20 minutes they watched. So you can imagine back in the 70s how this worked. So they were observing these people. And while they observed them, they realized that actually what makes teams effective is a result of team roles, cluster of behaviors, and they clustered them into 9. Initially 8, but brought in a 9th one. And that these team roles are what determine whether a team fails or it's successful. And it depends on how these members interrelate, how these various team roles are part of the team. And so when they were able to observe that, they identified these team roles and they gave them names. These team roles were further clustered into 3 categories. So you had the social-oriented categories, you had the action-oriented category, and then you also had the thinking-oriented category. And so you have 3 of these team roles in each of these categories. The next slide, please, Unsuki. Next slide, please. So the individual in the team. According to the theory, different team behaviors, like I say, clusters of useful behaviors are required in each task. But, so sometimes you don't really have to have all the behaviors in one task. It depends on the kind of task it is. And again, people are not just stuck in one team role behavior. Most times people have 2 or 3, and then they have some other behaviors that are manageable team roles that they bring up when the need comes up. But then if you're also a manager and you identify these team roles within your, as latent within your team members, you can draw upon them when you need them. So just putting people together in a place and expecting that they will work together as a team is not good enough. You need to know the makeup of the individuals that are in your team. And it is that makeup that helps you to maximize the potentials of these team members. helps you to exploit them to their fullest advantage for your team, and also helps you to manage what we call the weaknesses within each team roles. So now each of these team roles has its own strengths and its weaknesses. Now, what you do with Belbin team roles that is helps you to be objective about how you give feedback and how you discuss these team roles, because you then would have a language. You would see that, for a particular team role, people could be playing up the strength. So if it's that strength that you need in a specific task, that is what you are able to identify and pair the person who is best fit for that role. And as you would know, people are best able to perform up to 6 times better in a role that aligns with their natural flows. The next slide, please, Nsiki. The next slide, please. Have I lost you?
No, it's taking a while to respond. I have actually advanced to the next slide. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So here, usually I'll do a little quiz around this. I'll ask people to guess what these team roles are. But here, I'll tell you quickly, because I only had room for 15 slides, so I'm going to just, I didn't put in all the team roles in here, but these are the 9 team roles in the 3 categories that I mentioned. There's the action-oriented team roles, and in there you've got a shaper, you've got an implementer, and then the completer finisher. The shaper, of course, is one of the leadership roles in Belbin. And this is the sort of person who is direct, and then the strengths of that team role is that they're able to bring forward drive. They have, they have drive, they can bring order to things and all of that. But on the other side, on the flip side, they're also prone to provocating people. So when you have such a team role, you would be wise to pair it up with a softer team role, which may be a social-oriented team role, probably as a sort of maybe a team worker who will be able to manage things, and create harmony. So you have the implementer, they are the ones who finish. And on the side of these words, you will see an icon. These icons were, of course, from the 70s, but they're going to be reviewed shortly. But for the shaper, what you see there is a whip. So sort of like whipping people into order and all of that. That's the nature of the shaper. Of course, in today's world, you may not use that symbol, but it's Belbin is trying to update this as well, the symbols, but the theory behind it remains the same. The implementer, what you see there is like a wall. So they're the ones who work and do things. The completer finisher is the person who is painstakingly looking at things, polishing things. So what you've got there is a screwdriver, about tightening things up. And then for the social oriented roles, you've got the coordinator. This coordinator is also a leadership role. And if you have a coordinator and a shaper maybe next to each other, you have a bit of balance and harmony in that team. So the coordinator, like you see, that's like an orchestra, and they're using coordinating things, delegating appropriately, knowing who to place where, and all of that. And then you've got the team worker. The team worker is that person who brings harmony to the team and who looks after other people. I'm sure as I go through this, you would identify a few people in your teams who have these sort of attributes. And then you've got the resource investigator. That's the phone call, a phone hand. Not kids born in the 90s may not know these ones, but the phone. So it's a resource investigator who is like an external person and that is outward looking, knows all the people to contact for what and all of that. It's a very social role. And then you've got the thinking role. These are very creative people, imaginative, and because they're always so busy thinking, sometimes they would forget to communicate effectively. And then you've got the specialists. These ones, they drill deep. They are very careful in the area that they know of, So anything around that, they will deal very deep into that and give you as much resources and everything that you need around there. So that's the specialist. But then you've got a monitor evaluator. The monitor evaluator is that one who judges impartially, who you need for when you have to do strategy and things like that. So these are the 9 team roles. So what Belbin basically says is that for every role, for every task, you need a combination of roles. And it is that balance of these roles that would help to create the kind of environment that will make your team to be high performing and will make your team to be effective. Please let's go to the next slide. So what makes an effective team? For an effective, of course, is the same as success. And so I use this instead of just high performing. So representation of the team roles required. You need to have the right representation in the team. So you have to look at the task. What is this team trying to achieve? You have to look at the goal. What is it that they're trying to get here? And so when you look at that goal, you're able to think about the right kind of people that should be on the team. And then again, you look at the strengths. With the team role profiling that Belbin does, you're able to identify the strengths and the weakness of every team role. So if a person is a high shaper, you know from the Belbin assessment that this is a shaper, and then his next role, he or her next role is probably maybe a plant. So you probably see that, okay, you might be having a little bit of an issue here. So who do you put in that team to douse things a bit and also to help to make sure that there is balance? So, and then the person, of course, is also self-aware and conscious of their team roles. And so they're also better able to manage the weaknesses that come up and then also play up their strengths. So what you have in a team that would make it effective is one where, people are able to contribute effectively based on the knowledge of their strengths, that the managers are able to draw on the strengths of the people, and that they're able to manage the weaknesses of the people within the team and contain them because they know of them due to the profiles that they already have. And so they're either able to control by probably putting them where they're best required, or pairing them with people who would help to complement their team role behaviors. So Dr. Belbin says, so that a team role is a tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with others in a particular way. I've read a few books on leadership and all of that, and everything boils down to a person, and it's about behavior. So what Belbin does and what it measures is actually behavior. The next slide, please. It's okay. So people have asked us if Belbin is the same as personality assessment, but it is not. Personality and behavior are distinct. They're quite different. Belbin measures behavior. It does not do psychometric. So it's not a psychometric testing tool. It's a team behavior testing tool. Behavior is the manifestation of all the factors that work together. So underlying behavior are 6 factors. You've got personality there, which is more or less like static in your DNA. You've got your mental abilities, again, that is down there underneath for you. And then you've got your role learning. Sometimes you find that you might be in a position, in a situation, occupying a position. There's a difference in how you behave in that position as you would behave elsewhere. Then sometimes also the values and the motivation. So what is driving you? This is a factor that can determine how you behave in certain circumstances. And then of course the experiences that you've had. You might have had certain experiences, and because of those experiences, you then would have a way that you behave when you're posed in a certain situation. And then, of course, there are external influences, things that you probably have no control over that happen, and how you relate and how you respond to those affect how you behave. So you alone would not know your behavior, but of course, you would know what you think you're projecting, right? But how people perceive you and how they take in your behavior is different, and that is what Belbin tries to measure. And so Belbin is a 360 profiling assessment. What it does is that you do a self-assessment first, and then after that, you open it up and invite between 4 and 6 people to also give an assessment of you. And it is a integrated weighting of that assessment of both yourself perception, inventory, and the observer's assessment that then gives you your behavioral profile, so your team role behavior. The next slide, please, Nsiki. So I just have two of the behaviors that I'm going to talk about here. So this one is the implementer. But you can see from the icon, there are 9, but I'm only talking about 2. So implementer, like I said earlier, one of the strengths is that they are practical. They're very reliable and efficient, and these people can turn ideas into practical actions and organize work that needs to be done. So during these 9 years of observation, when Belbin now started identifying this cluster of behaviors, the first one that they observed was the implementer. So that was the first, that's the oldest Belbin team role behavior. And so they observed this and they found that these were impartial people that just wanted to get the work done. So they were not about, flaring their egos or whatever. They just were practical. How do we do this? And they were reliable, they were efficient, they were just ready to do the work. They organized what needs to be done and all of that. So these are people you need in your strategy and work planning, and also in trying to get things moving. So most people said during the lockdown period, you needed to have people like this on your team to help you organize work that needed to be done even remotely, and come back into working. So this is the implementer. Their allowable weakness. So for every team role behavior, there were the strengths, there are allowable weaknesses, and then there are non-allowable weaknesses. Now, the strengths are fine. Of course, there are strengths. Allowable weaknesses are the ones that we can live with. In your organization, you should also be able to live with an allowable weakness. But non-allowable weaknesses are the ones that should flag up some red, danger sign for you. And here you can see them that, okay, that they are somewhat inflexible. We can live with that. They're slow to respond to new opportunities. Okay, but you can then push them a little bit, or, depending on what level they are. And then, of course, where is the problem is that when they obstruct change, and meanwhile you need the change, that is where it becomes a danger for you, for yourself, for the organization. So you need to look at how, how much of a weakness you can tolerate. And in the Belbin assessment from the report, it actually shows, there's a bar there in the report that shows you if the person, what people observe is more of the weaknesses, and then it also shows you the degree to which the weaknesses are reflected and are observed by people. So that, in a way, is something that you can also use for professional development, for coaching within your organization, because sometimes you have really good people. Of course, the strengths are there, so they're useful. But then if the weaknesses are difficult and will be obstructive to progress of the team, then that is something to address. So it can it depends on who it is and what, you can either put in a plan to progress them, or they can address it themselves, but it's just something to know. But what Belbin does in all of this, that it gives you a language, because you then know these 19 roles, they're very easy. And so you can easily say, oh no, I need an implementer here to do this for me. Please, you call the person by the name. Everybody will know who that implementer is. Can we have the next slide, please? It's okay. Then you've got the plans. I mentioned earlier, these are creative, imaginative, free-thinking people. They're full of ideas and they can solve very difficult problems. They understand and explain the weaknesses that the team would have. And then you can also better manage toxic behaviors, because when you have done a Belbin assessment, for instance, of somebody, it comes back to them in the form of a report, and they can see how they bounce off others. And so when you're giving feedback, you're much more objective, and they can see it's not your words, and they can see how their behavior comes across to other people. So in effect, over 88% of teams who use Belbin say that it has enhanced employee engagement. More than 90% of people who use it say it has improved their self-awareness. Organizations have used it for effective recruitment as well, because you have things like a job profile, which Belbin can do for you, a job report. So they profile a job and let you know the kind of person that will fit it. And then they can again compare a person to a job. There's also a team report that also highlights the strength of your team. So there are different things that Belbin is useful for in order to help you make the best out of your team, make it high performing, because as you continue to learn and understand and have a common language of Belbin, which is applied to teams, you begin to see how best you can utilize the individuals, and also collectively how you can improve on the team and make it a much more effective and high-performing team. So in effect, that is it. This is all I really can and have time for at this moment.